I'm David Liggett with Data Center Hawk. I'm here with Compass Datacenters CEO Chris Crosby, and we're talking about the data center industry. Next. Chris, thank you very much for joining us today. Really excited to be with you.
Yeah, good to be here.
So one of the things that we like to do when we get to sit down with industry leaders is just hear about their tenure in the space. And so, you've been in the data center industry for a long time, and so would love to hear how you got into the space and how you've seen the industry change during that time.
Great. Yeah, kind of a crazy path. Started out software guy, computer scientist, and started working at Bell Northern Research out of school, and and then Nortel. And all through the explosion of telecom, deregulation of breakup of Ma Bell and deregulation of the PTTs internationally, and got to work in a lot of these buildings where we put a lot of our gear, and transitioned out start of 2001, into 2001 basically, working with Carlyle Group, and what's now CoreSite, and they had a couple buildings, one Wilshire building in LA and the Gold building in San Jose, and so spent about a year there at the genesis of CoreSite, and till I got fired for being a smartass, and then started up one of the predecessor entities for Digital Realty, and obviously we had a great run there. It was a lot of fun, and I think recognized faster than most the opportunity and the wholesale side of this business as opposed to just the retail side of the business, and so it was a fun journey, and then getting into 2011 end of 2011 timeframe, really starting Compass. So been definitely blessed to be in the space.
Yeah, so. I think when you were at Digital, and that was almost somewhat of the beginning of larger deals getting done with enterprise users. But what was that like from a time period perspective, and just the way users were evaluating the market? Obviously, that's changed a lot, from then to where it is now, from an industry standpoint. But what was that like then to where it is now?
It was hard.
Yeah.
Doing the first wholesale deals, creating those leases, kind of doing the first per KW kind of deals out there. The first financial services deal, first, so it was fun. The 5-6 time frame was a lot harder. By 7, 8, we were humming along. I think we did $40 million in contract, in revenues signed up back in 2007. So kind of crazy. We went from building $100 million to 750 to $1 billion. And
it's a pretty big change.
It was, and it was just being in the right place at the right time. That recognition that there could be a specialist that could maybe do this a little better. But it was hard to sell. It was hard to get through those first few, but we had a great team, and were able to do that.
Yeah. When you started Compass in 2011, what was the thought at the time of how to approach the market? And how was that iterated over the past 7 or 8 years?
I think I went back a little bit to my past and really looked at it from the perspective of we had a very service provider friendly model, and what's the right customer model? What is it that the customer's needs are, and how do you address those needs? And so really architecting more of a product type of play, which has evolved into a kit of parts now. But of course, when we started Compass, we really had to get the model right, and so now we've got a good kit of parts that doesn't break a system, so we can deliver, really on a paradox, right? How do you get low cost for the customer, high quality, and fast? And that's really that 3 pillars is what we've been trying to accomplish.
Yeah. What have you seen, from a user standpoint? And enterprise users, but obviously there's different types of enterprise users. There's different types of cloud operators, and but how have you seen user needs change, impact the way that data center developers are actually delivering the space today?
Yeah. So good question. I mean, we're definitely not trying to do a better version of something. We're really trying to do a different version. So we do look at architecting it a little differently based upon whether or not we're dealing with a co-location and hosting company as our customer, an enterprise as our customer, a cloud SaaS, or the big guys.
Yeah, sure.
And I think they're really different categories. and you architect some things a little differently for each, but you've got to know their environments, and our advantage comes in when the control lever is important for folks. Our best customers are the ones that have been in multi-tenant and have been through some cycles and see some value and maybe a little different way of doing things.
Yeah. Why do you think how have users looked at control, and how has that changed from their perspective? Because I think one of the things that has really fueled the data center third-party leasing world has been data center users getting comfortable with the fact that they can take their IT infrastructure and place it in buildings that are, to an extent, not controlled by them.
Sure.
But there are users that do want some level of control. They do want to speak into some of that. And so how have you seen that ebb and flow over the last several years?
I really think it's the option to have control that matters the most.
Okay.
Am I stuck? Do I have to move?
Yeah.
If I don't like the scenario that I'm in. If you're do you want to feel like the biggest customer, or do you want to just be one among the sea of customers? And so we're not serving the universal marketplace.
Sure.
And we're okay with that.
Yeah.
Right. We don't do beneath a building, and so that's going to limit us to larger customers.
Yeah.
Now our customers are some of the folks that serve those smaller customers.
Yeah.
So I would just say where that matters for folks, where flexibility matters, where control matters, where option value matters as far as what you want to do. That's really where we're going to resonate. If that's not high on somebody's list, that's okay. We're just I don't care whether it's 100 kilowatts or 10 megawatts. If that's not high on somebody's list,
sure.
That's maybe not our best customer.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Is there, when you think about capital in the space today, is there too much? I think we've seen the market looking at the space differently in the past several years. Do you feel like there's too much capital in the space? Is there not enough? How does that feel to you today?
I think anybody in an asset-based business that thinks there's too much capital is crazy. We deploy capital for a living and make a return on and of that capital. So, I think that there's always opportunities for new capital to come in. I think we're maturing rapidly in this space. I think it is interesting to look at where things are at. The same models that were successful 5 years ago aren't going to be successful today.
Yes.
And but there is a lot of capital, but there's also a massive amount of demand that's out there on a macro level. So, we still go through these cycles where you get phone calls, oh my God, is there oversupply in X, Y, or Z market? Yeah. Okay, sure, temporarily there might be. Yeah. But when you look at the supply-demand imbalance that's overall in the market, our cycles are a lot shorter cycles than normal real estate cycles.
Yeah. I always tell people there's nowhere that there's just stranded capacity sitting there that has been there for a long periods of time that no one is leasing. I mean, typically, within reason, if power is delivered, it gets leased over time.
Right.
So, okay, so when you think about sitting in your seat, leading your company, y'all made some strategic acquisitions over the last year or so. Talk about those, and then how you envision growing your company moving forward.
Sure. So, the Compass vision from day one is always to provide a secure place for any industry to plug in wherever they grow. Yeah. And part of that meant from day one the edge. And of course, we started our business in markets that people weren't going into, in places like Minneapolis and Nashville's and Raleigh's of the world. And now, of course, some of those markets have become a little more mainstream, but was always try to put where the client actually wants it. And the vision, being a network guy, was always, the public network and where that's going has its limitations, and eventually we'll catch it because there's just too much stuff going through the pipes, and performance is going to matter. And so at the end of the day, what we envisioned was, okay, we've got our data centers and we can do core campuses, which are very large scale and tens of megawatts. We can do, the megawatt plus type style campuses. And then how do you solve the edge? And we made an acquisition at the end of last year and purchased Bitbox and EdgePoint. And so the Compass EdgePoint Solutions program is really an interesting one in which we can provide solution sets for different types of folks. And so we bought the team that was providing a lot of things for the Google Fiber team at scale. And so what that does for us is gives us an advantage. The problem on the edge is much more of a utility type of problem. How do you service? How do you install? How do you take care of hundreds of units, and how do you do that well across a lot of different markets? And that's a software and service solution as much as it is what the box looks like. And so it's been a good. We acquired a great team and with John Trout and Sharif. Looking forward to as we continue to roll that out and serve customers. It's still early on the edge play, but the infrastructure is. There's an analogy to the original wholesale business. There's a need. It's a headache for a lot of people, and you can be an expert at solving that problem.
How quickly what do you think is the maturity time frame for the edge data center market? So one thing I like about you is you will look into the future and kind of communicate where you think things are going. But how quickly or how close are we to the maturity of that market, if you compared it to the larger data center market that we're in today?
I think it's going to be pretty analogous to the play that happened on wholesale. It starts with small increments, and then it kind of moves into the, right now we're in the curve where you wouldn't talk to an enterprise that wouldn't consider it. Even a couple years ago, that wasn't the case.
That's good.
So, and we started really wholesale business in 2005. So, the naming of it as that, and so that's a long time ago. So I think that doesn't mean that there's not good business in those early stages, but before it really comes mainstream, I don't know, is that 5 years, is that 10 years? I know that we'll see some use cases that are going to be pretty significant, within the next couple of years.
Do you, when you think about the customers that you all have, and then the people that you all talk to and have talked to over the last several years, how are you seeing them make the best decisions with their IT infrastructure? When they're considering how to, what solutions to look at, how to implement cloud into, co-location data centers and things like that. How are you seeing them do that well?
I think the best customers out there, I think, have a really good understanding of how the network works and where they think that can go. And then I think that they also don't have a one-size-fits-all. And if you look at public cloud, why would you develop on another platform today? Now, does that mean that you deploy upon it? Potentially. But knowing that, I think the best customers out there are okay with the fact that there's not one size that fits everything. And I think that they're realistic in those stair steps around, what's my least worst decision? I can't buy exactly what I want at all points in time, or everything's not going to go one way, or everything's not going to go the other way. And I think those are the more mature customers that are making a series, honestly, and especially in the enterprise space, it's a series of least worst decisions. It's not necessarily this is the perfect plan that we're going to do, because there's so much change. You've got to have the flexibility to deal with change.
You mentioned when you all started out, when Compass started out, you were in markets that were probably considered secondary, Minneapolis, Nashville, areas like that. It seems like the vision has switched to an extent as you think about other markets that you will grow into. What areas are most attractive to you all now, geographically, as you think about the U.S., and how will that grow moving forward?
Well, I mean, we still go where customers go. And obviously we weren't willing to play in those markets. We made some product changes to allow us to play in some of the larger markets and play on more the hyperscale, internet giant type of stage. But I think really it boiled down to, you want to get the kinks out, you want to get the model working well before you go to compete, and we had to feel like we were at the cost basis that could compete, because I still view this as as a sale in which, whether you're selling an automobile, if one's cheaper than another one, that matters.
Yeah.
And if you can sell that automobile at the same price as somebody else, and it has a lot more features in it, and has quality behind it, that's ultimately going to pay off, a la Honda versus Oldsmobile.
Yeah, that's good. So I want to transition a bit, but as you think about leadership, and this might be from more of a personal perspective, but I certainly have enjoyed some of the conversations that we've shared about just leadership in general, and how do you look at what you're doing today, how you're leading today, and like how have you grown, over the last 15, 20 years in the business, leading companies then versus leading companies now? How's your perspective changed, and what's that been like?
It's funny. I'm a lot more self-aware, I would say.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest area where I've grown. My strengths are the opposite side of that are my biggest weakness.
Yeah.
And so, I'm still an a-hole, but I'm a lot more aware of it now.
Yeah.
I'm a passionate guy, and I can't change my passion around things. But I think being genuine about things. Our first core conviction at Compass, which is crucial to our business, is humility in and pride out. And I've been very fortunate to have the career path that I've had and have the great teams around me. And as soon as you can recognize that, it's not all about what you want to do all the time, and how do you go point to a mountain, let your team go take it. And that's where I get all my job satisfaction out of. It's not the things that I've done, it's watching the team succeed. That's the best part about it.
Y'all have, it sounds like you have a really solid team together today. But talk about that, just as far as your team is built and how you all are looking to, grow that in the next few years.
So we've got some great leadership, in terms of our president and CFO that came on board. Jared came on board a little bit under a year ago. Raymond Hawkins now leading our sales team as Chief Revenue Officer, and then of course Nancy Novak. And Nancy's been fantastic. One of the true leaders of women in the space, and it's great to watch her and her vision accomplish. And still have the Chris Curtises and and the teams that have been there from the early days. So it's been fun. It's a great team to lead, and it's fun to watch them go do things. I mean, I think one of the biggest things as a leader, you want to hire people that are so much better at what they do than what you could ever think about doing.
That is true.
And so that's what's fun.
Yeah. When you think about the next few years, what will have, from a trend standpoint, what will have the biggest impact on the space? What do you think will?
The network.
Really?
Hands down.
Okay.
So I think that you're starting to see it. You're seeing terrestrial networks get built and submarine cables get built by folks that can't afford to have other people in control of that.
Yes.
From a quality of service perspective.
Yes.
And I think that as applications and the amount of use cases just keep getting more and more and more and more, you're going to see people want to be in control of their quality of service. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. You did go to the University of Texas.
I did.
A passionate fan.
Hook 'em.
When you think about the football season this next year, how do you think the Longhorns will do? What's your general take?
I feel a lot like a Detroit Lions fan, to be honest with you, because every year you're like, man, this will be the year we finally got it. And I don't know. It's been a long time since we were there. It's almost 10 years. Actually, this will be the 10th year, right?
Since the Rose Bowl.
Since 2009.
That they won. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just really hopeful that we're actually in the game when we play OU.
Yeah. Okay.
Like we actually have a decent record at that point.
There we go.
So that's a
win.
big game.
Yeah.
So baby steps. That's what I'm hoping for. When we play OU, we don't have two losses against crappy teams.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, thank you very much for jumping in here today. Really appreciate it, and excited to see what happens with Compass moving forward.
Thanks, David.